Hey there, this is Joby Thomas. In this video, I'll be detailing about the different aspects one must consider while buying a fishing rod. Understanding and following these aspects will help you get the right fishing rod for your type of fishing. As there are different aspects to be considered, I have split this video into two parts. In this part, I'll be detailing about how to read a fishing rod and how do those reading have a factor on your type of fishing. So to start with, I have a fishing rod here, and most of the fishing rod will have some measurements or some values over here. Now in this figure which is before you, there are three different sections of measurements. The first section from the left describes the weight of the rod. The second section describes the line strength which is standard for this rod, and the third measurement on the rightmost is your casting weight. Now let's dive into the in-depth understanding of these measurements and how do they factor your type of fishing. Now in general, there are two types of fishing. One is lure fishing, where you use such plastic lures, you tie them to the end of the line and you keep moving them in the water. This type of fishing is called lure fishing. Fish gets attracted by these lures and they come and grab these. The second type of fishing is ledgering. In ledgering, you use a static bait, which means that you will have a bait on your hook which once casted is not pulled or moved. So once you cast, you wait for the fish to come and have that bait until the fish gets hooked properly. That is called ledgering. So I have one such ledgering setup over here. This is a ledgering rod. If you can see at the end of the main line, I have a weight. This is around 15 grams of weight, and this leader line with a hook. So this is a perfect ledgering setup. Now the first measurement on the reading of the rod, which describes the weight of the rod. How does weight has an impact on the type of fishing? Lure fishing, as you know now, that it is a method that you keep on casting your rod and reeling in your line throughout your fishing. So you have to have the rod always in your hand and you have to keep on casting every single minute and reel in and then cast again. So in lure casting, you will have to have a rod with a lesser rod weight, period. For me, any rod which is below 300 grams, I will consider it as a light rod, and one which is above 300 grams would be heavy rods for me. Now let's say you are a beginner in fishing and you have had imagined to start with lure fishing and you never knew this weight rule, and you buy a rod which is heavy, which is above 300 grams. When you go for lure fishing, for a period of time you may cast it well, but later, because of the weight, you will get tired, you will not be able to continue or enjoy your lure fishing. So weight of the rod has a great impact on the type of fishing you are into. Now, on the other hand, ledgering, where you're using a static bait. In this type of fishing, once you have casted your bait, you need not hold the rod all the time in your hand. You can place it on a rod holder or you can make it lie on the ground. So mostly for ledgering, the weight will not matter. Now I guess you're clear with the first measurement, which is the weight of the rod and how it impacts the type of fishing you're going to do. Now let's move on to the second measurement now on the screen, which speaks about the line strength of the rod. Now in this example which is before you, the line strength says that this rod should be equipped with a line strength ranging from 5 kg to 12 kg, which in a way actually means that this rod can handle a weight or a force of not more than maximum 12 kg. Also, you can say that this rod has a breaking strength of greater than 12 kg. Now, this was simple. But does that mean that I should be always sticking to using a line which is less than 12 kg? As given in this, and does it mean that it restricts me to use a line which is greater than 12 kg? No. Say now in this example, we have a rod of max line strength of 12 kg. That does not mean that if you want to use a line which is 20 kg or say 10 pounds, you will have to buy a different rod. No. Fishing rod mechanism has three objects playing its role. One is the fishing rod, the second is the line, and the third is the reel. And this reel has a mechanism called drag. You might have heard. So every reel has a max drag, which means how much of maximum force a reel can hold on the line. Now let me give you an example. I have this rod which says on this measurement, which says that I should be using a line which is having a max line strength of 12 kg, but I am using a line of 20 kg, which means almost 10 pounds. So 10 pound line, almost 20 kg. But does that mean my rod will break? No, until I have this reel set up which has a drag of max only 5 kg, which means that even though my line is a 20 kg line, that 20 kg force will never get applied on this line, because the drag itself, the maximum drag of this reel itself is 5 kg. So the maximum force which this line will get is only 5 kg. So even if I use a 50 pound line to this rod, my rod will never break because of a lower drag system. So this kind of a combination can be used for your type of fishing without breaking the rod, and you don't even have to buy multiple rods for a different strength of lines. I hope the second part was very clear and how it helps you to utilize a single rod for your different line and reel setup. Now moving on to the last measurement on the reel, which is on the right. Now coming to the picture again, on the rightmost measurement, this measurement describes what is the range of casting weight described for this rod. First, let me tell you what is casting weight. Casting weight is the total amount of weight of the objects which are tied to the end of your main line, which includes your hook, it includes your sinker, or any other material you have maybe tied to the end of your line, your lure for lure fishing, bobber, anything. So all these objects, the total amount of weight, whatever it comes to, is your casting weight. Now, understanding what is this casting weight range given on this rod? It means when you cast your bait, your rod will give you an optimum casting distance if you follow this casting weight range. So let's look into the picture again. Now for this particular rod, the casting weight range is defined as 60 to 120 grams, which means when I cast this rod with a casting weight falling between 60 to 120 grams, I will get an optimum distance. Now let's imagine the other way around. Let's say I use a casting weight which is lesser than the given range. Now the given range is 60 to 120. Let's say I use a casting weight of 30 grams. What would happen? The force which is generated by the swing of the rod while casting, that entire force will not be properly applied to this casting weight, because the weight is way lesser than the given range, and because of which my bait will more of fly rather than travel a distance. Again, let's say I have a casting weight beyond the standard maximum weight range defined on the rod. So say I equip this rod with a casting weight of around 200 grams, which is way beyond the maximum on this rod. So what would happen? When I cast, the amount of force which is generated by the swing of the rod, most of that force will be applied to handle that amount of weight, and thereby causing my heavy casting weight to travel a very short distance. That is what casting weight defines. So let me give you an example. Let's say you are fishing at a river where the current is high. You want to have an optimum distance, and again, if you are ledgering, your bait should be static. So based on that, you will have to use a heavier lead. And again, for using a heavier lead, you should be having a rod of a higher range of casting weight. Now let's talk in terms of lure fishing. Normally your lure would be around 20-25 grams, and then in that case you cannot use a rod which defines the casting range say 50 to 100 grams. No, because you will not get the optimum casting distance. So for lure fishing, you should be having a rod in a casting range within which your lure's weight is falling. So that is about choosing a rod based on your type of fishing basis the casting weight. So this was all about reading the measurements on the rod. I hope it was a very easy session for you to understand and read the measurements on the rod and to link it with your requirement of fishing. There are other aspects too, like the length of the rod, the aesthetics of the rod, the material of the rod, the action of the rod, the backbone of the rod. All these aspects I will be covering in part 2 of the video. So thanks for watching this video. I'm hoping to see you soon in the second part. Thank you.